Well, good evening, everyone. Well, it's Carpo in the Darko, and you can see my neighborhood's relatively dark. No street light here, which is really nice. Since the power line got taken down in my backyard, it also took down the street light, and they haven't replaced it yet. And it's pretty awesome. Because I'm sitting out here looking at Orion, and I don't have a big glaring light in the corner of my eye. I love looking at the stars. I love walking out and just seeing how prominent and, magnificent they really are. The other night I actually walked outside. It was New Year's Eve, and I decided to eat some Hoffman style LSD 25. And I had two different friends I got it from. So I had two little stashes. I ended up probably eating maybe 4 hits each, my wife and I. And got rid of the kids for the night with the grandma, then sat around the house and listened to awesome music. And just tripped. And it was great. And I remember at one point I walked out and it was, maybe midnight or so. I walked out into the backyard and I looked up at the stars, and like when you're tripping, they all look like they're glimmering. It's like this, it's an experience that's slightly different with each psychedelic. With LSD, they kind of twinkle. With DMT or with taking psilocybin, it's an amazing experience. I've actually taken DMT experiences where I swear that I could actually see how far the stars were. It was like the sky was three-dimensional. You look up and you see the stars, and you can, they just look like a blanket of stars. But under DMT, it's like it takes on a texture. You can actually see the dimensions. It may be all in the head, but it's amazing. I'm sipping a hot buttered rum right now. I just made it, and it tastes so delicious, and I'm out here just like so grateful that I'm like healthy and happy, and yeah, anyway, that experience was just like awesome. It was something I need at least once a year. I need a psychedelic experience. So I walked out and I looked at the stars, and my first thought was that they're all gods. And it was just this instant realization. Not a theory or an idea or, maybe, or it wasn't anything I hadn't contemplated before a million times. But this time, there was something to it, something different. I'm looking up at these and thinking, our sun, the Helios, the shield of Helios, the reflection of the greater cosmos, and thinking that each one of these stars is another reflection of that cosmos. I figured somebody asked me the other day to expound on this psychedelic trip I had, because I did mention it in a video, and I said I was going to get back to it, and I never did, so I figure I may as well talk about it. But there's not really anything to say about it. It was just your typical LSD experience, but there was one thing I've got to say, about psychedelics and toys and music. There are a lot of hardcore psychonauts out there who think that, to them anyway, tripping means sitting in a dark room with your own thoughts. And for a lot of people, that's necessary. A lot of people gain a lot from doing that, and can really see themselves, and especially if they're using it as a tool like that. But I kind of felt guilty over the last few years, because I've been actually, every time I trip, pretty much every time I've ever tripped, I always have lights of some sort, and I always have music, and I just can't do it without that. Now, if I'm out in the woods, it's different, I can be out there with friends and just have a campfire, and that's enough. But if I'm at home, I figure I might as well have my lasers and toys out. And I thought for a while, is that like abusing psychedelics? And then I realized how much I enjoy it. And my latest experiment was with these 2 toys that we have. We actually have 3 of them. They were given as gifts for my kids. And we already had one, and we got 2 more for Christmas. And they're these, what are they called? You see them at the end of the checkout lines at like stores, and they're called something animals. I can't even remember what they're called. You know, like Star Buddies or Light Friends or some shit. They're these little plush animals that have like 3 lights inside them, and then a compartment with like a top on it that has these stars cut out, so it shines stars on the ceiling. And it's nothing that big, you know. It's cool, you know. It's but when you set 2 of them up side by side when you're tripping and put them on random so they switch colors, I mean, it was just the most amazing experience. I just had like, and I get giddy, man, especially when I'm seeing, like, you know, I enjoy getting the most of the visuals, the most out of my trip, you know. I really like to go all out. And as far as music goes, you know, I guess what it is for me, I've had enough trips where I've sat and thought about stuff. I've had some trips where I just sat and thought about nothing but stuff for hours by myself. And I enjoy tripping with other people now. I don't like tripping alone. And I like to always have music and, you know, things to play with. And I've realized it's because I've already gone through that stage of metamorphosis where I've already had my ego, you know, torn down. I've already been rebuilt and reborn. I remember one time I took so much, I don't know how strong these things were, but I think we only took 3 or 4 hits of them, but I think it was like my first really strong acid trip. And I mean, the guy warned us they were strong, and I still haven't really matched up to that trip, but once or twice. But I remember we walked down to the train trestle the next morning, and it was a train bridge that went over the river, the Willamette River, and it goes between Lake Oswego and Milwaukee, just south of Portland. And we would walk across the little catwalk there, and then hop over the railing, and there was a spot in the middle. Whoa, slow down, buddy. There was a spot in the middle called La La Land, is what they called it, because it was spray painted La La Land down there. And there was all this spray paint, and you could hang out down underneath there and party. They had a little, from where the pillar was poured for the bridge, you were on top of the pillar, and in the center there was this like metal thing. It must have been a column for pouring concrete, but it was basically a perfect bonfire pit, and people would party there, and the train goes right over the top of you. And further down there was a train tunnel. But anyway, those experiences I'd love to talk about sometime. They were fun. But this particular one, I remember it was just before dawn, and I was really high. And I climbed over the railing, and I started climbing up this ladder. And you know how the bridges have those 2 arches, some of the train bridges? Well, the ladder went up to the top of the first arch to where the angle got to where you could actually just walk up it. But of course it was still steep. The ladder just covered the first part of it that was steeper. I climbed up to it, and then I continued to climb, and I went all the way to the very top on this little... Just thinking about it now just makes me like cringe. It's like a 1.5 foot wide beam, like 150 feet above this river, and I'm just tripping balls. And I sat up there and watched the sunrise, and I remember saying, like, the experience was just so intense. By the time I turned around, my buddy was like, "Hey, fried guy," and I looked down, and he was down on the beach. He had gone all the way around and back down at that time, because I sat there just being reborn. It was like this amazing experience as I watched the sunrise. And from that day on, you know, everything was different for me. It was my first real ego death. It was amazing. But it wasn't about the ego death, it was about the rebirth. So during all these experiences, I've gone through all the mental changes and understanding and considering society and people and love and myself, and now I just enjoy the trip for what it is, you know, for the fun of it, not as an abuse or as a, because I don't like to ever disrespect. I won't take mushrooms just at a party or something like that. I mean, I will only eat them on a very special occasion. And I'll keep them around. I've been known to keep the mushrooms for like 3 years until they go bad, and I just throw them out. Because, if the time's not right, I won't do it. But when I do, I get the most out of it. So it's getting cold out here, so I'm going to go. And happy trails, everybody.